Mr. Andrew Colthart took over the pastorate in 1984. And under his leadership, the church once more experienced a period of growth and expansion and continued to seek to play its part within the local community. Andrew had a heart for people and for evangelism. And the church enjoyed lots of evangelistic and social events like church barbecues, international evenings, outdoor services, house-to-house evangelism, and much more. Amongst other things, Pastor Andrew introduced his accordion playing to the church, and the times of worship took on a new feel. He also introduced a drum kit to the church. Well, not everybody was happy with a drum kit during worship, and 1 or 2 people left as a result, but many more joined. The demographics of Walthamstow had changed in the 1980s, and Emmanuel had more of an international feel, with members representing some 20 different countries. Out of the main congregations, smaller congregational expressions were formed as part of Emmanuel so that they could hold their services in their own native tongue. In 1983, a civil war began in Sri Lanka, and during this time, many people fled to the UK for safety. Several Sri Lankan Christians began to attend the services at Emmanuel Hall, but struggled to understand the English language. Pastor Andrew Colthart met with them, and it was decided that the church would have a separate group that would meet for services held in the Tamil languages. In 1984, in a desire to have a lasting impact on the community, Christine Musgrave oversaw the setting up and opening of Emmanuel Playgroup. The playgroup operated from one of the houses that had been purchased in Erskine Road several years earlier, and has always been a popular and well-attended group. It's still running to this date in our building in Erskine Road. A mother and toddler group was also started, welcoming people from the local community into the church. On Friday lunchtimes, Emmanuel Hall ran a coffee bar for young people, and at that time, a youth orchestra and choir began under the direction of Andrew Colthart Jr. A lunchtime group was started on Tuesday afternoons for senior citizens to get together for lunch and friendship and fellowship. That was always attended by a mixture of folks from the church and people from the community, and to this very day, known now as the Friendship Hour. And it's usually a great time and a meaningful time for some of the senior members of our community. By the mid-1980s, the church building was becoming packed to capacity on Sundays. So planning permission was sought to double the size of the church upstairs and downstairs by knocking down numbers 102 to 104 Erskine Road and extending our building right through. Well, the previous planning permission that was obtained only involved knocking down 104 Erskine Road. So a new application was submitted requesting that both the houses that the church owned were allowed to be knocked down for the extending of the building. Well, the council opposed these plans. They were concerned about the loss of the 2 residential buildings and said categorically this was against council policy. In the church's defense, a local councillor argued that the church ran a number of viable community projects, some of which were actually used by the council themselves. So, councillors at the Planning and Implementation Committee ignored the advice that they had been given and eventually gave permission for the rebuild. Pastor Andrew was overjoyed with the outcome, which we believe was the result of much praying. The new building opened in 1986, decorated to a high standard and with all modern amenities. The church name was changed to Emmanuel Christian Center at the opening, and a great celebration service was held. The church opened its door to the community again. Our administrator, Gary Padamore, shares a memory of using the new baptistry pool that was purpose-built into the stage in the new building. It had been carefully cleaned using washing up liquid. So whilst baptizing Bentley Greaves, they both slipped and went under the water together. Pastor Andrew, however, stayed on his feet and was able to save them both. Emmanuel Hall Playgroup also changed its name and became Emmanuel Christian Center Nursery. And Pastor Andrew launched a teaching program at the church known as the Logos School of Ministry. As has already been mentioned, Pastor Andrew had a great heart for evangelism, and the church got involved in what was known as the GYM Challenge, GYM standing for Jesus in Me. This was an AOG initiative where several local churches put on evangelistic events for the community throughout the year. Well, ECC ran some very successful events during this time, with outdoor performances of song, drama, dancing, and of course, one-to-one evangelism. Chaz and Chris Musgrave regularly organized church youth, children, and family holiday camps. Over the years, these were held at Herne Bay, Carity Wood, Brambletide, just to name a few. Perhaps one of the most memorable of these camps was at Ashdown House Boarding School in East Sussex. There are many fond memories of singing by the campfire, the very lively evening worship services, and that very cold outdoor swimming pool, the fancy dress parties, talent competitions, and the very exciting and exhausting sports days. In 1997, Pastor Doug Williams joined Emmanuel Hall as the associate pastor. Well, he brought an additional skill and freshness in sharing the Word of God with the congregation, as well as his gifting in worship. Again, ECC experienced a period of growth and rapidly found that the church building in Erskine Road could no longer seat the full congregation. As an experiment and to alleviate the need for space, the church hired the McKenty School Hall in Billet Road on Sunday mornings for a service, and this worked really well and was quickly adopted to be our regular Sunday morning venue. Eventually, that venue filled to overflowing, and so a service called the Overflow Service was reopened back at Erskine Road. So Emmanuel Christian Center, one church with 4 congregations, was being birthed. Pastor Doug's passion for music saw the church launch its very first music CD with the ECC worship team, and the CD was called Raise the Praise. In fact, Raise the Praise as a worship team began to travel and minister around the country and also overseas. The youth ministry at this time was expanding, and it was decided to employ a youth pastor to oversee it. David Bisley was employed, and the work continued to flourish. Pastor Andrew and Pastor Doug recorded heart-to-heart radio broadcasts on Premier Christian Radio for a period of almost 3 years. These radio shows were very, very successful. With a clear call from God, Pastor Andrew thought it was time to move on to plant more churches and train future leaders. And he did so with a relocation to Swindon, to Norfolk, and eventually Folkestone and the Southeast Coast.